You're listening to the Buyer's Mind Podcast, a podcast for internet marketers and business owners covering topics like psychology, sales, persuasion, and so on. Revealing what makes people buy. Here's your host, Juho Tunkelo.
Okay, welcome to the Buyer's Mind Podcast. I'm Juho Tunkelo, your host, and today we're talking to a real pro's pro when it comes to copywriters. Trevor Crook, originally from Australia. I said originally, and I'll explain in a minute, but welcome, Trevor.
Thanks, Juho. Pleasure to be on the call, and appreciate you asking me.
Sure. And I have to say, I mean, I think you first came onto my radar about 10 years ago. It might be even more, when I was just getting to grips myself that okay, maybe I'm gonna give a real whack to this copywriting thing, and started to focus on it, and you were one of the guys who were in full speed by that time, and read a lot of your stuff, and how long have you been in this game anyway?
Yeah, I first decided that I was going to be a copywriter back in sort of mid-2001.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, I was a banker for 20 years, or in the banking industry for 20 years. But the last 5 years of that, I was sort of being a broker of business deals between the banks. But my interest was always in marketing. So for about the previous 12 months, I was focusing more on, doing some business coaching, teaching my old banking clients and my finance clients some marketing strategies and stuff. And then I came across copywriting, and realistically just haven't looked back from that time,
Yeah. So you, considering your background, do you do a lot of writing for basically for financial outfits?
So when I first started, no, not really. I mean, it was, I have done it since then, for various financial markets, share trading, stocks, Forex trading and the like. But most of my sort of finance clients were like in the commercial lending area, so property development. So, it wasn't too many of those needed the style of copy that, that we provide.
Mm-hmm. So you're basically, from what I gather, you're based in Malta. Well, most of the year anyway. You're presently in Costa Rica. How did that happen?
Well, yeah, I mean, Malta, firstly, yes, it's been my home base for the last 5 years. I mean, I decided in 2006 that my business needed to be fully online, because what was happening was the previous 12 months, we spoke about your brutal flight to Australia before. I was on the speaking circuit from 2004, and in 2005 I was asked to speak at a lot of events in the US and also in London, and I did 10 trips from Australia to London in 11 months. 3 to London as well.
Right.
And stupidly, and I mean stupidly because I agreed to it, one weekend I had agreed flying from Australia to speak in London on the Friday and Texas on the Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about a long flight. I spent 59 hours in the air out of 72.
Oh, my.
And by the time I got on stage in Dallas, Texas, with 680 people in the room, I didn't know where the heck I was. So much so I had to excuse myself 10 minutes later and go back on after I slept for a couple of days. So I traveled for a lot, and I lived in various places, Hollywood, Vegas, Denver, Toronto, Vancouver, Italy, Ireland, UK, Italy a few times, Canada 3 times in total. And then I found Malta. And, I just liked it there in terms of living on the Mediterranean in an island surrounded by crystal clear, blue waters, loads of history. It's part of the EU as well, right? And then about, it was just over 2 years ago now, it would have been like December 2000 and 2012, a friend of mine who also works online wanted to escape the Canadian winter. And so he said, look, I'm thinking of going to Costa Rica. I've heard good things about it, especially about this particular village, surf town, tourist town. Do you want to go and split the costs on an apartment? And I said, sure. And I really only thought I would stay 3 months, maybe 4 maximum. And I stayed 6 months and left, and I was back. I left in the August of 2013, and I was back in December for 3 months, went back to Europe for a year, and now I'm back for 6 months. I sort of like to follow the sun. I mean, I'm not too much of a snow bunny or a snowbird. It's still a novelty for me. And
Yeah.
but give me sunshine and heat any day of the week.
Yeah. Not a bad lifestyle to have, and I guess there's something about whether you're an internet entrepreneur or freelance copywriter. You a lot of people, myself included, have in that sort of space have the kind of crazy schedules anyway. I think it was a year and a half ago when I really hit the wall myself. I had a client that was split between San Diego and Mumbai, and so I was basically on call for 24 hours. It wasn't set up that way, but a couple of months into it, I just realized, okay, I can't do this. So, but basically, yeah, it does allow for someone to live wherever you please, and you seem to be making the most of it.
Yeah, look, I know that I do, and obviously, I have my international lifestyle page, because that came about because people kept saying, "How do I get your life? How do I live your life?" And for me, it's been normal because I've been doing it now. I mean, if you exclude the year of traveling while still living in Australia from 2005, I mean, I've been doing this for 9 years. Living here and living there, and obviously on tourist visas, you're limited to 3 months at a time in most countries, and 6 months for me in London or in the UK and Canada, being Commonwealth countries. But it's not too hard. When I'm in the Schengen area in Europe and when my visa expires, I'll pop over to London for a week or Ireland for a week. I have friends all over the world, so usually I'll go and stay with somebody where possible.
Yeah.
And then just fly back. It's never been a hassle. And and so like now, being on in Central America and surrounded by wildlife and crazy sunsets and all that type of thing, it's a good contrast from being in Europe. It does mess your schedule up a little bit for clients. I mentor clients in Australia, the UK, and in North America. But for example, when I left Europe to come over here about a month ago, I had to change my days because of the time difference to Australia.
Right.
And then it's the clients in the UK, it's my morning. It does mess things around, but if that's the worst thing that happens living this lifestyle, I can handle it.
Yep. All right, so getting into marketing a little bit more. I don't know what your experience is, but from where I sit, it seems to be almost like people consider social media to have taken the place of real, honest-to-God marketing, not to mention direct response. But basically, today I have to almost explain myself, what am I talking about if I'm not talking about social media marketing. So what I mean is that people seem to be getting a bit lazy in their marketing, and when I get into somebody's marketing who's doing that, and I just insert just a few things, a proper headline or a proper call to action, something like that, or spruce up the front page of an e-commerce store, and then there's all of a sudden like 300% or famously 1000% improvement in one case. So I think that just proves that copywriting seems to be a little bit underrated these days. Do you think? Depends on who you talk
Yeah.
to, of course, but
I mean, I think for the typical business owner, I mean, even going back to before, the internet was what it is, and before social media existed, the typical business owner, from what I've found, pretty much always had the head up their own butt when it came to marketing.
yeah,
You know, they're all about their logos and their business name, and they didn't really know what copywriting was. Generally, you had to explain that, right? But at least that back then they were trying different forms of direct mail and stuff because really they didn't have a choice. Now, it comes to now, and you are so right. I mean, I'll speak to people, and I'm sure you do, and they, well, I've got a Facebook page, I've got an Instagram account, I've got this, and they're doing nothing with it.
yeah,
Right? It's almost like, yeah, we've got a website there. But yeah, it's nothing more than, what I call a dung heap in cyberspace, not making you any money. And they don't even think to test a headline if they have a headline to begin with. And it's almost the forgotten part of marketing. So, I mean, for guys like us, if we can manage to get a prospect to become a client and try what we know works, like the results that you're getting, they get amazing results. It's like you're the rock star, but really they should have known this stuff anyway.
yeah.
So yeah, I think as social medias / social marketing's gotten so much bigger, people think that's all they need to do.
Yeah.
Again, as well as I do, that if you have a Facebook, business page, fan page, even your own profile, you've still got to work it, right? In terms of the content you put on there and the wording you put on there. It's just as important.
Right. Of course.
So the copyright skills do come into play, but yeah, people are they're oblivious to it. And it's just like, wow, your ignorance is costing you money. You're leaving money on the table. Why? Because you won't open your mind to applying copywriting techniques, which, you and I both know have been around for a long time,
Yeah, and I think...
Years.
Yeah, and I think part of it is that that media, basically, and advertising, or what passes for advertising, is so cheap today. Anybody can put up a web page or Facebook page, or I mean, even a lot of online ads are fairly inexpensive. Well, depends on the market, but basically, you don't have the feeling that when you're putting together a promotion or an ad, that you're testing it with real people. It's just, let's throw something out there instead of, I mean, if you're doing like a direct mailing, you had a real hard cost of, okay, we're gonna spend this much just getting this out. It better perform, or we're out so much money.
Yeah, and there was no instant gratification then either.
Yeah.
If you're going to run a decent-sized newspaper ad, you had to, or any ad, but I mean, let alone a small lead gen. I mean, I remember when I was doing my direct mail in Australia, and I went to run my first, big-size ad, which was a $4,500 ad back in, probably 2003, 2004. Man, I was nervous, outlaying that sort of money for an advert,
Yeah.
Let alone, I mean, luckily then I was on account with the newspaper and it wasn't paid up front. But guess what? I still had to pay for it.
Yeah.
Whereas now, I can throw $20 at some Facebook ads or some testing, and people want the instant gratification. And again, even those small adverts, the copy skills have to come into play. And with those, you're not really playing with length of words. It's almost characters.
Yeah,
Every character's got a count. It's like the old Google pay-per-click. Is it 25 characters on the headline or something like that? Everything's got a count. You've got to think about it. But I just find, people's ignorance is bliss. I mean, and I won't name names, but I did a proposal for this now friend, about 6 weeks ago before I came to Costa Rica, and that said friend is here, and it's a new business venture for them, and she's got a business partner. And, I was just going to do up a simple website for them, do some YouTube videos, teach her some marketing strategies, and, how to rank pretty easy in her search term, because it's such a small marketplace here.
Right.
And it's like, I don't really have the budget for it, just starting the new business. And I struck her some sort of deal. And I spoke to her 2 days ago. She said, anybody could put up a website and stuff. And I said, what's happening with this website? I said, you really need it. It's been costing you tours for the last month. And she goes, oh, well, so-and-so wants to do it himself. And I go, no disrespect to so-and-so. He's got no idea how to build a website, right? I estimate it's costing probably $5,000 in tours so far by not doing it properly. I said, he's got no copywriting skills, no idea what to say. I've looked at your flyers and brochures, they're all crap. All right?
Yeah.
I said, your choice. I offered to cut you a deal so you don't pay it all up front, but they just can't see it because, someone's armed and dangerous with a little bit of knowledge, just enough to blow their own left ear off, and they think they can do something. They think they can write their own copy, so to speak. They don't realize they're writing copy in terms of how we know it. They're just writing something which isn't going to work. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing is that people are looking for shortcuts where there aren't any. People are looking for templates and one size fits all kind of solutions, and they're trying to, at least given that somebody would try to write copy, they would, you can model, sometimes even people plagiarize other copywriters, but in reality, such templates don't really exist. You have to do the research, which is, at least my experience, is that it's oftentimes it's 50% or more of the actual writing job is to do the research and on the audience, on the product, and all of that. The people just look for that magic keyboard that writes the copy, but
totally. There's half the battles in the research, and you're so spot on. I mean, I tested some Facebook advertising last month, and on one way of, it was just to generate some leads for sign-ups for my writing course, and I was just following, some tips that I'd got from somebody else that was part of a private sort of mastermind group, and anyway, so knowing the target market who predominantly is signed up to my Facebook fan page, I just called out to 7 women aged between X and Y, and people saying, up the age limit, and why is it only open to this and that, and it's just and I said, very simple, based on the people who respond to my page, they're the ones I'm going to call out. This is called testing in marketing.
Right.
I'm not going to open it up to everybody and waste money on people who so far haven't shown they're interested in what I'm about.
Yep.
And it's amazing the amount of people that I've spoken to. I'm not sure whether you've come across this, who don't even know there's an insights button on their Facebook page.
True. Yeah.
Right. And I get people go, well, why would I use Instagram? I mean, obviously you and I are both on Instagram. It's I'm a late starter to that. I didn't start until the end of May last year, but I've already created a bloody nightmare for myself. And it's getting worse, but it's okay because it's all part of the plan. It wasn't. Right. I knew it wasn't instant gratification. Right. But so many people go, why would I do that? And I go, well, this is why you're doing it. Even, I've got one of my mentoring clients is a very, very good copywriter from Australia. Him and his wife have an acrylic splashback business, for kitchens and showers and all that sort of stuff. It's going very well in Australia. And I had a mentoring session with both of them the other day. about the acrylic splashback business, and I said, you know, you need to be on Instagram with this stuff. And when I explained it and explained about hashtags and the importance of them, you know, the light bulb went off.
Yeah.
But for many people, it's just, again, their ignorance just gets in the way.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's mind-boggling, but at the same time, I'm used to it.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. I mean, I don't know if you do what your main work consists of. Do you still do, like, you know, big packages of, you know, long form sales letters and all that sort of stuff? But for me, at least half of the work is other things like video scripts and emails and whatnot, and sometimes even like one-off contact letters. Like, okay, I need to contact Bill Gates, and I do my best to help somebody contact Bill Gates, and that actually happened, by the way. But
Cool.
which was interesting. But okay, getting back to I mean, writing a full sales letter is fantastic, and I'll do it, you know, every day if I can. But I think I recall some cases where you wrote like a short letter of like 1 or 2 pages and got fantastic results anyway. So it's not like a hard and fast rule that you have to have a huge big sales letter in order to get the results. Or what would you say to that?
Yeah, look, 100% correct. I mean, to answer the first part of your question, these days in the last, well, really, I probably announced my semi-retirement from doing big packages in 2006. I don't do as many as what I used to. You know, when I first started, I was hungry and I was just constantly doing big packages for people.
Right.
I still do them, but I'm very selective as the ones that I do. I prefer the sweet stuff, you know, like still doing, you know, I'm happy to do mini direct mail packages, 1 to 2 page stuff. Yeah, I'll still do website copy and stuff, long form if people need it, with email copy, etc. But these days it's more about, I'm more into the mentoring side of it to help other writers, and I'll take projects on and then outsource them to my proteges.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of what you mentioned, yeah, I mean, just one example was I wrote a 2-page letter, which was sent as direct mail, which generated $4 million to float a company on the Australian Stock Exchange.
Nice.
After that company had done all sorts of media, spent a lot of money on, you know, TV, radio, newspaper, and mailed their own investor list, right, who didn't respond to their copy.
Right.
So I was asked to write a 2-page letter to mail to the same list, which I did. And as it was only a $4 million subscription, I mean, it was oversubscribed. But the importance was, and I mean, you understand this, but for any sort of fledgling copywriters out there or people who just aren't quite sure, you know, you have to understand the angle of the copy, right? The angle of that copy was to get the investor list interested enough to respond to make the call for an appointment.
Right.
It wasn't to get the sale, because this particular client was very adamant and confident they could get them in the room, they would close them.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened. Right. Now, but that letter was a letter I'd modeled the format from, targeting builders about 2 years prior. That went so ridiculously well. I've gone, you know what, I can apply the similar trigger pattern and copy pattern to float, you know, to raise investors. But it was the same format. Right. That's what I love about copy.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes those 1 to 2 pages or 4 pages, you know, they'll outpull a 20-page, 30-page letter, you know. And I'm sure you get asked the question, I get asked about short copy, long copy, video, subtitles, etc. And I go, look, you can have a one-page letter which can be as boring as bat, you know what,
Yeah.
or you can have a 50-page letter which is boring as well. We can have a 50-page letter which is just crushing it and increases sales.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I don't start a letter to say I'm going to write 58 pages, which I've done. You know, it just happened to be that way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned writing for builders. I think you mentioned that. I had one case where I had a client that was in construction technology, and they'd been mailing actually quite a bit. But what they'd been doing is that, you know, they took the best advice available to them, which was some advertising agency who said that, well, you know, you do a great, you know, color brochure of many pages, and you show them pretty pictures of how your method works and all that, and they had almost nothing, and you know, to me it was like, well, why would you do that in your kind of business? You're not selling to I don't know, hairdressers, so why not just take a direct response approach? And it was, I think it was just a 2-page letter, and it did I don't know how much better, but it was just obvious that not only just use direct response to begin with, but just realize who you're actually writing to.
Yeah, look, that's just paramount, you know, and it's just it surprises me in some ways, and even though it shouldn't, when, you know, you're dealing with a new client for the first time, and majority of the time they don't really understand who they're selling to. And, you know, if they have the data, you can find out, you know, you can build that avatar. And, you know, and I tell this story off stage, but it's just, I'm sure it would be interesting to your listeners, is many years ago I critiqued a 2-page, effectively was a 2-page letter sent out as a, you know, like a folded, 3-fold sort of flyer type deal for one of my clients in Scotland who was offering Tai Chi classes, and, you know, he'd done my one of my courses, and so he'd done a pretty good job on the copy, right? And he sent it through for a critique. And anyway, we had a Skype chat, and I said, look, you know, who are you selling to? Male or female?
Right.
And he goes, oh, female. His answers were like, I'm the idiot, right? Oh, female.
Yeah.
Okay, so question number one, yeah, we know most of your clients or paying customers are female. He goes, yep. I said, what do you think the percentage would be? Right, give me a ballpark. He goes, 80%. So 2 questions, we knew 80% of his paying customers were women. Leads to question number 3. Do you know roughly what sort of age group? And I gave him some parameters. You know, are they 25 to 35, 35 to 45, 45 to 55? And he's going, oh, yeah. I think it was 35 to 45.
Right.
So 3 questions, we knew who 80% of his buying customers were. And the last question that I had was just part of my profiling questions, which is quite in-depth, and I'm sure you have them as well. I said, what's the number one reason they go to Tai Chi? He goes, stress release. I said, so 4 questions. We know that 80% of your customers are female, age between X and Y, who want stress release. He goes, yeah. I said, so nowhere in your copy do I see a headline which calls out, you know, attention women aged 35 to 45 who want stress release.
Right.
Right? None of your copies targeting women, except he knew these answers, like bang.
Yeah.
Right? And then I said, look, you know, the time difference, it was night time for him. I said, find out tomorrow, like, exactly what percentage are women. And it ended up being 90%. Now, this isn't a one-off, circumstance.
Yeah.
You know, this is where guys like you and I can come in and just shine very simply, because we understand how to probe, get some answers, and create the sales copy around the people who are actually spending the money.
Right.
You know? I'm sure you found that yourself.
Yeah, very much so. I remember you talking about well, the whole buyer motivation thing. We could talk hours on that alone, but I think you had like a three basic buying motives that you can you elaborate on those a little bit to our listeners?
It's been a while since I wrote that one.
Or anything, it doesn't have to be that, but just can you give people some idea of where to start when you want to when you don't really know, or you're just learning copy, and you want to learn how to, okay, now maybe you've done the profiling now, and how do you go about pushing their buttons to sort of getting under their skin a little bit? What are the kind of approaches that you can use to get there?
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the keys is, if you've done your profiling question, correctly, where you've really been able to extract as much information as you can about, from your client as to who the heck is buying from them and why, right? Well, then, you start to, I brainstorm with myself. So, I've got a picture of that person, like an avatar in my mind. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to work out, what motivates them. I mean, in terms of, we're pretty much all alike and respond to the same buying urges and same emotions, which, have had people buying stuff ever since the caveman first grunted, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you look back in, direct mail or copywriting from 100+ years ago, right? It's all about whatever your product or service is hitting the emotional triggers as to why people should whip out their credit card and cash and invest in that product. And, people's sort of basic buying emotion number one is that it's self-preservation. Right? Meaning, we've got to have food, we've got to have clothing, we've got to have shelter before we can think of anything else, even our friends, right? In other words, so it's your oldest inbuilt instinct to look at yourself first, right? So it's the oldest buying emotion that's out there, right? And then, what I consider buying, basic buying motivation, motive number two is romance. Once you've got the food, you've got the clothing, you've got your shelter, your thoughts can turn to leisure, romance, travel, and so on, right? So, depending on what your product or service is or what you're writing about, if there's that element there, you want to be tapping into that buyer emotion, right? So whatever the copy does, whether it's, if it's a video sales letter or it's written, direct mail or online, that person, it's hitting the emotional trigger and they can see themselves doing whatever it is, and they're therefore keeps them in the copy, and they're one step closer to making that, buying decision. And then, you've really got money, I'm not talking about the, buy my magic bullet and make $10,000 while you, sleep overnight type stuff, But money allows you, it gives you security, can be financial security for your family, your loved ones. It allows you to travel, live your lifestyle, have a good life type thing, right? So when your copy can literally encompass all of those three buyer motives, when you write the copy, from a copywriting perspective, it's going to make getting the sale either for your own product or for your client so much easier.
Yeah. Right?
Because you're tapping into those things which are already ingrained in their brain pretty much from birth.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, go ahead.
So if people fear health, they respond to certain things. If it's money, they respond to things about becoming financially secure. When I wrote sales letter for, you know, I wrote the sales letter to sell a guitar membership site last year, and I can't bloody well play guitar.
Yeah.
I don't know the first thing about playing a guitar. I don't know the first thing about guitar speak.
Yeah.
Right? The language. But fortunately for me, my clients had done a lot of surveys, and they had so much data there that it was so easy for me to get into their buyers' emotions in their own language,
Right.
and smash it out of the park.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And while you were talking, I was just thinking back to projects that I've had before, and it is basically those three in different forms, and maybe there are more, but there are just very basic sort of core emotions based on which the best kind of copy, or it seems to be easier to write around that. I mean, you don't need to, cover, 20 different objections that people have if you're just hitting that. You can sort of. Do you agree that you can sort of bypass a lot of a lot of tough questions when you just focus on hitting that emotion and leading them towards the end result?
Yeah, look, you're so spot on. I think sometimes people try and overcomplicate it, or if they're of we'll say the new genre of copywriters who've never done direct mail and they're just in the online world, and they've only ever written for the biz op market where everything's too over the top hyped. They really need to go back and study the greats. And was it you that was saying, if you don't know who GH is, was that your comment I saw on Facebook the other day, Gary Halbert?
Oh, maybe, yeah.
And it's so true. It's one of the things where I sort of, when I was first, I didn't know it straight away, but you obviously know Elmer Wheeler from Tested Sentences.
Yeah.
Right? So many people can rattle off, they've heard of, sell the sizzle, not the steak. Right? They don't know it's Elmer Wheeler. They don't know the 10-year word study that he did. And that in itself is where, that thing, test 105,000 sentences, words and phrases on over 19 million people over a 10-year period. It's such a fascinating book in terms of just the wealth of knowledge you can get out of it as a writer about understanding people's buying emotions.
Yeah, yeah.
And, for many years, it still is, but that was what I consider, my advertising Bible, because it just helped me understand people's buying emotions so much better.
Yeah, that's great. It's interesting. I a little while ago I did like a 3-part workshop on copywriting for a client, and I decided to use pretty much the first session on just giving out the best of nuggets of the old greats, and part of the audience was like, well, can't we just skip this part and get to the writing? And I was like, well, if you really want to get the results, then let's spend a little bit of time here on good old Halbert and good old Claude Hopkins and whatnot. And when we got to the second and the third one, then they started to get like, okay, yeah, we see why you did it in this way. So
yeah, it's definitely interesting because I love all the old stuff, and no doubt you do, and it's amazing what's there. Sure, some of the language is a little bit peculiar for today, but the many years ago, it must have been, I don't know, 2000. It was probably 2008, because I did Dove Barron's event 2009. You're obviously familiar with the damaged stock run letter that Collier did probably back in late 1920s or 1930s, somewhere around there, mid-20s. And it's been used very successfully, in direct mail terms and the like ever since. I decided to do a damaged stock run offer for an online audio course.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Interesting.
Yeah. And, I wrapped the damaged stock angle around the fact. I mean, it was done. It was an original, my copywriting blueprint tele seminars that I'd done. It was like 10 modules, right?
Uh-huh.
And, there was some background noise and the type of, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Which is typical in this type of recording, right? Unless you're really proper equipment. So I used that as the angle, and I got good. I can't remember the exact results, but I did get very good sales out of it.
Yeah.
But what was interesting was I was speaking at Dov's event in Vancouver, Canada, and I mentioned Robert Collier and some classic stuff, and this guy comes up to me later after I'd finished, and he goes, "Yep," he goes, "I bought that." He goes, he goes, "Brilliant." But, like many people, they'll try it offline, or why can't you adapt it? Just adjust the reason why it's damaged, so to speak,
right.
But use the proven method, which is now 85 years old, roughly.
Yeah.
It still works. If it ain't broke, don't try and fix it. Just adapt it to today's circumstances.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's a mistake that a lot of people just getting into copywriting easily make, is that they try to be too clever and try maybe a little bit of too much humor, or just try to be original in a wrong way, and instead of relying, when you get the fundamentals, then you can break the rules a little bit. I mean, I've seen you use humor in promoting your own stuff and so on, but that's a different thing.
Well, yeah, you've got to have the audience that's okay with that.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, for the last, quite a few number of years, I've sort of been living more the lifestyle and haven't focused on the business side of it too much. And I'm sort of gearing up to get back into that. And, we'll be rebuilding, effectively a new list of, business owners and entrepreneurs. And, I'm still going to continue to use that style because, yeah, it might upset a few, and that's okay, but I'd prefer them to be upset once they've got the free download and unsubscribe and stay on my list.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to use the, constant profanity, but, I'll just say what I want to say. And
right.
So when they get to the thank you page to download, I really give them a reality check. It's got several reverse triggers in there, and it tells them exactly what they're going to be getting from me. If they don't, take my free stuff and unsubscribe,
Yeah.
And that's just going to give me that smaller list of a much hungrier crowd.
Right.
And, I was talking to someone about that recently, and I said, look, back in 2005, I think it was, I'd only been online for a short time and, just over a year. And I was one of the affiliate promoters for when the World Internet Summit was still doing their events, and it was their Nashville event. And I wasn't speaking at that one. I'd spoke at a previous one, but, I mailed to my list, which at the time was only about 2,400 roughly.
Right.
But in terms of affiliate sales, I was number 2 behind Armin Marin, beating all these other big name guys that had massive lists, hundreds of thousands. And it was because my hungry crowd, whilst it was small, was very in tune with what I was about and my style.
Right.
I wasn't out to please everybody.
Yeah, that's something you really can't buy. And if we just recap for listeners, the there's a lot of things I'm gonna try and squeeze into the show notes, but at least the three basic buying motives that you mentioned, self-preservation, romance, and money, anybody can just take a look at what they're offering and see if there's an angle they can use. And it just occurs to me, like self-preservation, there's like I think the site is called endofamerica.com. That is basically, I think they're selling a financial newsletter, but it's a very kind of, it hinges on, okay, these are the financial realities in America and whatnot. And, it's I think a 77-minute video sales letter, and it's made like $200 million. So that kind of gives you an idea that, yeah, it sort of works. And in terms of romance, I suppose it's a good part of what your international lifestyle sort of angle is right now. And if people would go to your site, I think it's freelancewritersecrets.com, is it?
That's correct. Yeah, freelancewritersecrets.com.
Yeah, and take a look at what's in there. They can get an idea of, yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I mean, like in terms of like what you'd like, the $200 million thing. I mean, I was hired a few years ago now to just beat the controls for a large weight loss company in America. I won't name names, but they had great copy, they had great controls. Obviously, that's the game: beat the control.
Right.
Wired me a fistful of money up front. Couldn't strike a royalty deal, sadly. But they went from 125 million to 400 plus million 2 years later.
Okay.
Now that copy that I tweaked and their infomercial script just pretty much used all those basic buyer motives. So yeah, I mean it's interesting how nothing really changes in terms of, what I say to people is this: when everybody gets in the shower in the morning, 99.99% of the world get in there naked.
Yeah.
Right? It's only when they put on their work clothes, their uniform, if they're a policeman or a fireman or a doctor, whatever it happens to be, they take on that role. At the end of the day, though, they do anything on emotion.
Right.
You've got to tap into the emotional triggers which make them tick.
Yeah, that is very true. So, okay, what if somebody wanted to learn copywriting today? Do you offer coaching, mentoring, stuff like that, or?
Yes, I do. I do generally a 3-month mentoring package where we basically speak once a week for around 45 minutes, maybe an hour, and just take them whatever level they're at and get them to another level or two beyond. And it's not, I don't take anybody on just because they have the money. It's about looking at them and making sure they're a good fit. But one of my guys in Australia that I've been mentoring now for, the 3 months is almost up, but he's going to continue. Is he's already a great writer, but he wasn't positioning himself to charge more money.
Right.
Whereas he's since doubled his fees on everything.
Okay.
Everything. I mean, it's just, he was already doing 6 figures a year.
Right.
But yeah, it's just all about the positioning and the mental side of it, and making sure his own proposals were hitting the emotional triggers of the people he was sending them to, and him believing that he's actually worth the fees that because he had the chops, right?
Right. Yeah.
He just wasn't charging enough. So yeah, I do the mentoring side of it for sure. All
right. Well, fantastic. I think we've been talking almost an hour, which is double of what I usually do. But I couldn't resist since I got you on the line now. So I thank you for your insights and everything. And I'll put up the links in the show notes, and people can check out what you're doing. And I thank you for your time, and it's been a total pleasure.
Likewise, I appreciate having me on, mate. And I look forward to listening to the recording.
All right. So thanks, everybody. We'll get back next week with another interesting call. Thanks, Trevor.
Thanks, Juho.
Bye-bye.
See you, mate.